Okay, so I thought I would talk about the effectiveness of the National Guard in DC, along with some misconceptions people seem to have of the National Guard and what they think that they do. So the National Guard, this isn't the Insurrection Act, by the way. You can deploy the National Guard without using the Insurrection Act. But the National Guard was deployed in DC under Trump, and the National DC Troopers, worked perfectly. You know, the liberal governors and mayors, try to paint the National Guard as no different than the military, sending in Marines to kill people, which is just not true. The National Guard actually, submerged, and they combined with the police fully well and put down riots. They stopped burning, and they protected monuments the entire night, despite all of the violent protesters. Now, the big difference between, the National Guard and the military is the National Guard has training to be police, basically. They're trained like SWAT officers and riot officers, but they're done to the intensity of a military, soldier. So, versus, regular SWAT and riot officers who are trained in those areas, but as police officers, they do it the same thing, but to the, intensity of a soldier. So it's basically just a super effective form of police, which it was effective. It put down the riots, it stopped a lot of the violence, they protected the monuments, it worked fully well. Now of course liberal governors didn't like this, because they're encouraging violence, so they tried to kick them out of hotels because obviously they need a place to stay. Thankfully they only removed some of them, and they all found places to stay, and it was all fine, despite the liberal mayor's best efforts to ruin it. It actually stayed just fine. Now, the main misconception is people equate the National Guard to the military, which the National Guard is not the military. Like I explained, there is a big difference between the two. Now, if we look at DC, compared to states like New York, which are liberal and don't have any Republican, control whatsoever, DC, after deploying the National Guard mixed with the police, has put down almost every riot. There was no riots, and peaceful protesters are allowed to peacefully protest. But when you look at states in cities like, New York City, it's still up in flames. And one of the main reasons is the New York governors passed a bill, so that way whenever you were doing first-degree rioting, first-degree assault, first-degree vandalism, you actually didn't get a bail set on you, and you were let out instantly, which, as we all know, the liberal governors just want chaos and violence and people to die. They value your life over, nothing really. The vote is all they want out of you. They don't care if people you care about are being beat in the streets. They just want your vote, which is nice, but, places like New York are still up in flames with riots everywhere and people taking control. And you see companies now, trying to put up Black Lives Matter signs and try to be inclusive on their companies. Tease fingers, but you can tell they're only doing it because they don't want to get burned by the mob. But the mob doesn't actually care about Black Lives Matter. I hate to break it to them. They are there only to steal and rob stuff. They don't care if you have the rich sign. If you look at celebrities, what was his name? It was Chris something. He, was tweeting, "Oh, defund the police, I'm with you guys, BLM." And then when the rioters came to his house, guess who he called? He called the police to defend his rich gated neighborhood, "Oh, you want to burn stuff? Yeah, go burn the poor areas, but don't come up to my rich area, or I'll call the police on you." They don't get it, the same people who are voting to defund the police always end up needing the police to protect them at the end. It's just so stupid. Thankfully, companies like Activision aren't supporting the riots. They are saying Black Lives Matter, they're supporting the movement, but they aren't supporting looting and riots like other companies and other celebrities who are giving bail money and stuff like that, which is very, very disappointing when you look at it. Now, I do want to talk about, the efficiency of what would happen if, the National Guard was deployed to other states. As we've seen from DC, it works. It fully works. Now, this is not suggesting, like in my last video, I'm suggesting to send the National Guard out, not use the Insurrection Act and put military troops in there. There's a big difference, but of course the governor just want to blind you and say, oh, these guys are on camo and these guys aren't camo, they're the same thing, you know, because they don't want their riots put down. But thankfully, you know, people have a brain and you can Google things and you can look up things. The National Guard and the military are not the same thing. They are fully different, and National Guard is actually trained in the ways that they say they are not trained in. It's the military that is not trained in to put down riots. Now you see, you know, all police stations have been having to do things like call up bomb and SWAT teams and regular officers to fight alongside the riot officers to put down the riots. And videos have been circulating about more police brutality. But if you look at the videos, you know, you can obviously see it's the people getting in the way of the police. Like, you can't just run up to police, get in their way, and expect them not to push you. And then, like, you know, if you look in, like, places like Hong Kong, for example, when they had the riots, the police were fine with beating you to the ground and caving your skull in. They didn't care, you know, versus our police, which are just trying to push you back. And you have seen arrest videos, you know, like, for example, opening up a car, you know, just breaking its windows. You know, if the people are still resisting arrest by then, they're going to tase you, they're going to try to grab you and pull you out. If you are still resisting arrest by then, which you shouldn't be, again, it's fully legal, they're going to start hitting you and pulling you out violently. And if you are still resisting arrest, they're going to pepper spray you and tase you and pull you out of the vehicle. But that's all I really had to say. You know, as we've seen, the National Guard is fully effective. And I do not support the Insurrection Act, but the National Guard should be deployed and the governor should be taking that up. This is TF2 Fan 1 Exact Shots logging off. Peace out.